everyone. I am Manashri Sharma, Assistant News Editor at the Economic Times International, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to this exciting interview series brought to you by the ETHR World Southeast Asia in collaboration with Alight Solutions on the theme of the new rule of HR transformation in 2023. As part of this interview series, we will look into the new equations for leading digital transformation. And in this very first episode of this series, we are delighted to have Peck Kem Low CHRO and Advisor at Public Service Division and Anirban Das, Vice President, Alight Solutions Asia Pacific. So Peck Kem does not need any introduction. As the Chief HR Officer and Advisor for Public Service Division, Prime Minister's Office of Singapore, Peck Kem is responsible for professionalizing HR in the public sector of 16 ministries and more than 50 statutory boards. Welcome, Peck Kem, to the session. Really a pleasure to have you on board with us.
Thank you, Anishri. Thank you for having me. Very happy to join you guys.
Thank you, Peck Kem. We also have Anirban, who is responsible for professional service business for APAC and heads the APAC delivery centers, including ANZ for Alight Solutions. Alight Solution is a human capital and business partner to the world's most influential companies, which specializes in implementation of technology to help you understand what your human capital is saying and to connect the dots between people, work, and life, resulting in a more competitive organization, better equipped to succeed in today's rapidly changing world. Welcome, Anirban, to the discussion. Great pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, Anushri. It's great to be here. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Absolutely. And so without further ado, let me invite both of you, Peck Kem and Anirban, to share your insights and views on the topic, the new role of HR transformation 2023. So Peck Kem, I invite you, and since we are talking about the next big transformation in 2023, I want to take a step back and reflect on the big transformation that we experienced in 2022 with instances like moonlighting, quiet quitting, great resignation, or great reshuffle. Talent has been definitely the most uncertain aspect in the world of work. However, when we talk about Singapore, it's ranked ahead of 131 countries, listed as the second best country in the world to find talent. So what do you think worked best for the country in attracting the right talent? In your experience, what are the top 3 trends that are expected to elevate the talent function across the region in 2023?
Thank you, Anishri. I think, Singapore is actually a very small country and we don't have any natural resources. So whatever we have, the only natural resource we have is actually our people, right? So the government actually puts a lot of emphasis on the ability for Singapore to punch above its weight by really making full use of the talent pool, and whatever we cannot have enough of within the local talent pool, we are very open in the economy to really attract, foreign talent into the country, which is also why in Singapore, 1/3 of our workforce are actually complemented by foreign talent.
Yeah.
So I think in the last few years, and if you look at the Gartner report that looks at the top 5 priorities for HR leaders in 2023, and the top 3 priorities where they surveyed about 800 HR leaders across 60 countries. First of all is really leader and manager effectiveness. Second of all, it is really organizational design and change management. And third is really on employee experience. And then fourth is on recruiting. And fifth is on the future of work. So in terms of the top 5 priorities that, over 800 HR leaders have talked about, or things which are, on top of the list for 2023, on manager and leader effectiveness. And most of us in HR would know that, you can create a culture and all that, but very often the leader really makes a lot of difference and toe the line in terms of creating the culture and really making the organization work. So there is a shift Okay, after 2.5 years of COVID, as we enter into endemic phase in 2023, there's a clear shift towards more human-centric leadership. So leaders and managers are expected to be more authentic, to be more empathetic, and to be flexible to fit the unique needs of a very diverse team members of the organization. So even within the public service, we have something called, leadership competency 360, where we get 360 feedback, where we ask people who are reporting, as well as peer, as well as, their customers and their bosses, to give, genuine feedback. And it's not only the nice things, but we also have what we call some red flags, where your peers and your staff are saying, Peck Kem, I think you're not getting enough sleep. I think you are not exercising enough. And you may think that these are just impressions, but that's what 360 is all about, right? About the impressions that you have and how your behaviors have affected you in your job. And on OD and change management, this is, there is continuous disruption. And from COVID to in Singapore especially, we are trying to push Singapore to be a smart nation. So the public service is really trying to push towards more digitization and making the Singapore government a smarter government. And a lot of our solutions, and also because we don't have enough resources, human resources, we are trying to use technology as an enabler. Rather than, keep flogging on the dead horse and say, be more productive, do more with less, but you don't have enough people means you don't have enough people. All of us only have 24 hours a day. So in terms of managing all these changes, and, people get a bit burnt out from too many changes in a short time. So I think it has created quite a fair bit of uncertainties, as well as a high level of tension, and it affects the willingness of our employees to really cooperate with us. That may result in, change fatigue, as well as, reflected in higher attrition than what is desired. And sometimes I think for us to address some of this fatigue, for HR, we actually need to not only look at the kind of work that we are expecting people to do, we really have to help our employees prioritize and handhold them a bit. So one of the models that we have used is what we call the 3D model. Okay, whatever you are doing or whatever your bosses is asking you to do that is in your work plan, we adopt, from the work process perspective, as well as the kind of work that we have to do, we adopt a 3D model, what we call a 3D model. So 3D model means whatever you're required to do in terms of the work or the work process, can you defer it? Is it so urgent that you must do it now? Or can you defer it and do it later? And you can defer it and do it later, then you don't get so stressed because it can be done later. Then the next question is, actually, if you can defer it, can you actually drop it? Do you need to do it? Okay. And if you can drop it, stop doing it, and once you drop it, did anybody die? No. What was the implication? And makes you think about how you want to, keep work simple. This is kind of like a Marie Kondo of work. Okay, so can you defer it? Can you drop it? And if you cannot defer it and you cannot drop it, then the next question, the third D is, can you do it differently? Okay. Instead of coming with this 10-step process, can you do in 3 steps? And can you look at how to do it differently so that you can still achieve the same level of outcome? Or maybe you achieve a sub-optimum outcome, but you actually save a lot more time and resources. And it's just like, if you keep generating that monthly report, you may want to ask, actually, is anybody reading the report? Is it so urgent that I must submit the report by the 1st of the month? Okay, so can you defer it? Say, no, cannot defer. It must be done on the 1st of the month. And then you ask, can you drop it? Is anybody reading the report? Over the last few months that you have sent out, Has anybody given you any feedback? Okay. And if no, you cannot drop it because it is required in order to do the next steps. Then your question is, can you do it differently? Can it be automated? Can you use RPA rather than you have to invest physical time and efforts to get the report generated? And maybe after the report generated, you just give your key insights, which is how you're going to do it differently. So that's one of the models that we are doing to better help our employees prioritize. So it's not from 1 to 10, which one do first? It is from 1 to 10, which one can you defer, which one can you drop, or which one can you do differently? And on employee experience, about 44% of the HR leaders believe that their organizations do not have compelling career paths. Okay, and just 1 in 4 of the employees are confident of their career in the organization. To me, that is very sad that you don't have a career path and you're just going in, day out, doing the same thing. So what we have done is we have come up with a competency-based HR management system, and we came up with some competency framework just to tell people, well, this is the level of competencies that we are expecting of you out of this job. So for example, in HR, I've got 20 HR competencies with 5 levels per competency. And each of the 5 levels for each of the 20 competencies is a behavioral descriptor. And I have conversations with every one of my HR director or HR leader. And in that one-to-one conversation, I ask them, please fill up where you think you are in terms of the 20 competencies. And then have a discussion with your supervisor or your reporting officer. Have them assess with you where they think you are and set those expectations. And then tell me what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term aspirations? And then from the 20, why don't you pick 2 or 3 where you think you want to develop for the next year? And whatever you pick, how is it contributing to your next 3 to 5 year career plans? And how is it going to help you achieve your long-term career aspirations? And that is something that we are going to make it mandatory so that you have a clear idea of what are you doing, not only today, but how are you preparing yourself for the future?
Thanks, Peck Kem, for sharing these really great insights and the practices that you are implementing in your organization, and really echo your thoughts about talent has been a critical aspect of world of work, and having the right kind of employee experience is what that would really make a difference. It is said that it's not employers market anymore, it's the candidate driven market, and we really have to offer them what really matters to those candidates. You mentioned about as simple as helping them prioritize their work. That really helped them, being motivated, take care of their well-being. So thank you so much, Peck Kem, for sharing that. And I also, in fact, like to point about that employee experience will not only be, driven by HR and their practices. Technology has a greater role to play in building that unified experience. So that also brings me to the second question. And Anirban, I come back to you on this question, since you are being at the forefront of leading HR transformation for several organizations in this APAC region. If I ask you about what is going to be the next big transformation in the world of work, what do you think is going to really impact the world of work? What is going to bring that disruption next year? And what are the current roadblocks that HR leaders they are facing in taking their transformation journey to the next level?
That's a great question, Anushree. In my view, much like automation, the spread of analytics and artificial intelligence will continue to make its way into every part of our business and life. Data and AI would further definitely enable HR and allow them to make more data-driven decisions. Now, we talk a lot about data-driven decisions, but when we look at day-to-day how managers, HRs, or business leaders operate, a lot of time on the HR aspects when they are making decisions around comp, around promotion, growth, it's more based on perception than data. So I do feel like there would be a bigger role for analytics and artificial intelligence. According to Gartner, approximately 30% of the organization intend to use AI tool as part of their HR technology, just to complement their overall solution. So hyper automation, to me, as AI becomes more advanced, the breadth of tasks that can be automated would definitely increase. For example, even now AI chatbots greatly enhance the employee experience. It provides workers with information which is easily accessible. They don't have to log into a system. They can ask or chat, um, uh, can be done in a mobile phone or a tablet, and it's just very user friendly. So that enhances their entire overall experience. And I think Peck Kem talked about experience. So I do feel that as we move forward, we'll see more artificial intelligence which would come in day to day in HR operations. Now, coming to in terms of the biggest roadblock to the transformation, I would say that organization resistance to change would be one of the biggest roadblock. And given that the workforce is very entrenched on traditional processes, and I also feel there is some concerns about job security, like if the machine is doing, or if a AI or a chatbot is providing an information, you might not need a tier 1 or a tier 2 support, which can do the work. So some of that definitely would create resistance, but I definitely feel organizations must address some of these apprehensions in order to enable a successful transformation.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Anirban on this. And one of the challenges that we have with people are afraid of the unknown. So as we use a lot of RPA, and there was big conversation or debate about whether robots will take over our jobs and all that. So one of my employees, who is quite senior, and she does quite a fair bit of the administration work, and she had bravely stepped up and say, I'm not afraid that robots will take over my job. I will reskill myself, and I will aspire to be a robot whisperer, so that I will be controlling all those robots that will be doing all those jobs instead of me doing all the hard work, but I will be controlling them. So I think it requires some level of mindset shift, and I think in the organization, in how we design the organization and how we design the jobs, we have to give people the assurance as well as the skills to become a robot whisperer.
Thanks. Thanks, Anirban. Thanks, Peck Kem, for those insights. And Anirban, you mentioned about, there are a lot of technologies coming, and there would be a lot of focus on automation. While there's some sort of automation in every function of HR, but that's going to be the major focus. And when it comes to adopting and implementing technologies, there's some sort of resistance from employees also to really be able to, accept that technology. When we talk about, leading this transformation, digital transformation, what do you think, how HR leaders can prepare themselves and teams to create more impact on the business with right technology? How they can, bridge that gap between implementation and execution of the technology? How they can motivate their employees to really use that technology?
Good question, and a nice segue on how HR or what HR leaders can do. I'll base my response on a recent Olive blog post which I was reading. The top drivers of transformation through 2023 will be growth fueled and focused primarily on three key domains. One is organization design and change management, future of work, and people analytics. And I'll add a little bit of commentary around both, all three of them. So organization design and change. If I look at some stats from Gartner, they say that 53% of HR leaders cite organization design and change management as a top priority. They all feel like that's a key aspect as we move and the company and the organization grows. There would be changes which will come up, and it's very important that there is a focus on how that change is managed and how we can improve and increase the adoption. 45% of employees, as Peck Kem was mentioning, there is a lot of fatigue from changes. There is a constant change which keeps happening, and they do complain that my organization is always evolving. This one change after the other, and that that the change fatigue is real. Let's get that message correct. But I do feel that there is constant change. In order for companies to sustain the growth and to grow faster, there would be changes. And HR leaders must navigate the organization through the change and to mitigate some of these impacts. The second, as we mentioned, this talked about future of work. So I think COVID came with some big lessons, and I definitely feel post-COVID, we haven't gone back. Most organizations are struggling with getting people back to workforce, and I don't think, at least in next few years, we will get into a full workforce working from offices like we had pre-COVID. So the future of work is a hybrid and a remote workforce combination. But more than just the hybrid or the remote workforce, it's just a component of that shift, which is important, like how you will manage the workforce. What would be the strategy in terms of planning the workforce planning, and the future talent needs. So a combination of three in terms of how employees are working, whether it's remote or hybrid, what's the workforce planning, and the talent strategy and the needs. A combination would drive the future of work. And the last item around people analytics, I definitely feel that people analytics will, and the demand and need for it would continue to grow. The businesses need a framework to understand the data and implement its finding within the organization. So be it hiring, or be it internal movement, whether you hire externally or internal, all of that would be driven by analytics. How people are performing in the roles. Do you have people who moved internally from the organization for a certain role who perform better because they know organization culture, how the organization operates, as opposed to someone external? So some of these analytics and data points are very important to drive the organization forward and enable business leaders to make right decisions.
Thanks, Anirban, for sharing that. You really mentioned some points like, how HR really need to navigate the maze around the change management and really bring life to the change that is happening in the organization. And at the same time, you really need to motivate your workforce to be aligned with the change that is being demanded by the business. Peck Kem, I'll come to you since we are talking about a lot of changes and implementation of technology. And the focus of building the future ready workforce and need of future ready HR leaders. What kind of workforce development initiatives that you have implemented or you are executing that is benefiting your company the most? And any suggestions for talent leaders that they should be focusing on?
So absolutely agree with Anirban on some of the points that you have raised. So in Singapore Public Service, we have basically looked ahead and say, what does HR look like in the year 2025? So we did this back in 2020. So looking 5 years ahead. And three key initiatives that we have kind of put in place. And I'm talking about, about 150 HR directors and for about 3,400 HR professionals within the public service in Singapore. So for the HR community, we felt that it's important to focus on three outcomes. First outcome is really, how are we adding value? How is HR adding value to your agency or to your business? And the training that we're giving to our HR leaders and our HR community is really, how do you really speak the business language and be that strategic HR business partner? Okay. So one, strategic HR business partner, and have a plan on how am I in HR adding value to the organization and to the business. The second portion is really how are we adding value to the employees? Okay. And the way we do it is through, a very progressive culture and be the people champion. So as Anirban also talk about, hybrid work is here to stay. So when we talk about the future of work or the future of workplace, yeah, we are going to have hybrid work, but it's not just, having shared desks and tables and allowing people to work from home. We all know that the crux of making it work is really to build a culture of trust within the organization. So that when you are working remotely, your manager knows that you are actually doing work and you're not skiving and going shopping somewhere or doing something else which is not work. So with the new generation and the new kind of work, how do we redesign the work? How do we create that environment so that there's a high level of trust to facilitate the benefits that we can reap from a hybrid workforce? So second was really a progressive culture and be a people champion. And thirdly, how is HR adding value to HR as a profession? So how do we be a future-ready HR? What are the kind of skills and competencies that we ourselves need to build and invest in ourselves in order to be ready for the next level? So COVID has taught us to be quite in the forefront, has helped us build some muscles, which we have never built before. In 2 days, you kind of, everybody cannot come into the office. You have to have safe distancing. And then, people have to work from home. Do you have enough connectivity? Do you have enough laptops and all that? And I've never been more proud of the HR profession because we stood up to the challenge and we performed like rising stars so that the businesses could continue and employees can continue to remain employed and still earn a living and not starve to death just because, suddenly there's a change in the way we work. So it is time that, despite all our busyness, that we really invest in ourselves and to look at how do I acquire the kind of skill sets so that I'm ready for the next step, ready for the future, and learn from the pandemic and come out stronger from it. So the 3 key areas that we are focusing on, like I said, how do you invest and how do you value add to the business through a strategic HR business partner and coming up with a strategic workforce plan. Secondly, how do you value add to your employees, to your stakeholders, or to your citizens in our case, in the public service? And that's through a very progressive culture, as well as being a people champion and focusing on the employee experience. And thirdly, how do we add value to HR as a community? By investing in ourselves and equipping ourselves so that we are ready for that future. So a lot of this can only be done if we tap on the technology that we want to make really go high tech, but yet high touch. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is something which, in order for us to go high tech, we are making sure that our employees, all of our employees, have certain level of digital literacy. So it's made compulsory for all my 153,000 public officers in Singapore government. Okay. Because unless you have some level of digital literacy, you will not be able to catch up with what the rest of the world is going to do. So this is where we are putting money where our mouth is. And when you say, you want to be a smart nation, well, invest in the time, invest in the equipment, and invest in the training to get our people up to that level.
Thanks so much, Peck Kem, for sharing that. I think these are some of the great lessons to be shared and to be known by all the HR leaders and professionals as they move forward and build strategies for the next year. And I really like your point about, emerging as a business partner rather than just being, tackling all the personal problems or HR problems. HR really needs to, raise their bar and become business partners for the leaders. Anirban, I come back to you, and very quickly, Peck Kem shared a lot of lessons from 2022 and what to look forward to 2023. What, according to you, are some of the most important learnings from the year 2022? And how HR strategies, what are some of these HR strategies that we can take forward? And in your opinion, what needs to be left behind?
In terms of some of the major lessons learned, I think the pandemic and us going through then like it was like a BCP triggered for all our companies at the same time. So it was definitely there were a lot of lessons learned, and I felt like three main things which I have observed or learned from this pandemic era was one, it's very important for leaders to provide empowerment. Now, we talk a lot about empowerment. It is very important, we saw both from HR as well as business leaders did a lot in terms of empowering the colleagues as well as their managers to make decisions. And there was challenges or situations where they had to make the quick decisions, and there were a lot of things which were constantly changing or shifting. So in that time to give that empowerment and effectively enable that was a big success. Now, at the same time, I felt empathy is again a key factor. It was very important that leaders had empathy while dealing with situations which we all went through. Empathy around balancing work life, people having challenges with family members falling sick and the need to take care, and in order and so that they can manage it as well as do work. There were a lot of adjustments which had to be made. The schools and colleges, everything was closed. People had to spend extra effort to take care of kids. Like earlier, there were schools, so there was a lot of ease in managing it. But given now the parents have to do that, there was a lot of empathy which was required in order for the employees or colleagues to effectively navigate through that period. So I feel these would be some of the good lessons which we learned from 2022.
Thank you so much, Anirban. And it was a great conversation with you, Anirban and Peck Kem. Lots of learning, lots of insight. As we close the session, is there anything that you would want to leave our audience with? Any important advice, any insights, or any last word?
Yeah, if I could kick this off. So I think the pandemic has taught us so much, and I think one of the key takeaways that we have from the pandemic is people are quite resilient, okay? and we really learned that you can actually adapt, and you can actually need some level of creativity to tap on the strengths of the workforce. So I think key for me in the next couple of years, one is job redesign. We cannot keep looking at hiring people 9 to 5 and must be one warm body doing the job. We need to look at what is the job that needs to be done. Okay, and then we look at what are the resources available to get that job done. It may not be a full-time person, and it may not.
Sure. Thanks, Peck Kem. Anirban, would you like to add something? You really ponder upon a lot of values and what HR leaders need to do. Any insights on what kind of leadership values that HR leaders need to display in operating in this absolutely critical business landscape?
Yeah, I think I'll just keep one, and I will just take it as a segue from what Peck Kem was talking. We dealt, so in today's era, we are in an era of uncertain times. It's very volatile and it's uncertain. Be it the geopolitical situation, what's going on with a recession or a global recession looming. So I do feel that there would be a lot of uncertainty even as we dive into 23 and 24. But to be resilient is very important. Business leaders, HR leaders always bear the brunt of some of these changes which is happening and the impact from some of these changes. And resilience to me is very key in order to be successful within the organization. I was just fascinated with the human spirit and how we fought and dealt with the pandemic. We went from brick and mortar to 100% virtual. People stayed within to contain the virus. And some of this have taught us great lessons on what we can do when there is a need. So I'm looking forward to what lies ahead. But resilience to me is the key factor which organizations needs to have in today's era.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Anirban. Thank you so much, Peck Kem, for sharing your valuable insights and thoughts with us. I personally learned a lot, especially, we have been talking about the next big transformation, the importance of digital transformation, the importance and enabling role of technology and its role in enabling the greater employee experience. But something that I will take away from this conversation is how to lead this digital transformation yet being more human in our practices and our policies. So thank you so much, Peck Kem and Anirban, for taking out time for this conversation. And I'm sure that this conversation will really help our leaders to go back to their whiteboard and carve their next digital journey that would be valuable for their business and their people. Thank you so much. And here we come to our end of this first episode, and I look forward to coming back with another exciting episode interview with Kelly Chua, Global Head of Human Resources at ASMPT. Thank you and stay safe.